Morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to see you. So today we have a couple of people who are going to talk about an aspect of the cast that I didn't spend much time on last time. But before that, I'd like to address something that might be giving some of you some anxiety, which is Lab 1. I walked through some of the labs the other day, and it was entertaining getting on Lab 1 in the first place. Please don't be anxious when we have system glitches like that. We're not crazy. We will handle things like credit in a sensible manner of which students will approve. You'll be fine. What I want to do now is I want to talk a little bit about the connector classes. As I think you've picked up, data science can't be done just sitting in a cubicle by yourself or just among computer scientists or just among statisticians or even among computer scientists and statisticians. The data come from somewhere. They come from domains, and they come from domains where there are experts who have questions that they want to answer. So crucially for data science, it has to be a collaboration between people of very different interests. And so this page is something, the one that's up there is something that you should be aware of. Alexei, I've messed up your computer somehow, because what's on here is not what's on there. That. Yeah, so that is data.berkeley.edu. That's not our class. Hang on just a second. That's not our class. That's the big data science initiative. And data.berkeley.edu has a place that says what this fall's course offerings are. Please. Where are you saying this? No, not that one. You go there. And then that. Okay, I think I can scroll this now. All right, so Foundations of Data Science, that's us. And then we have the connector courses. And you can see Smart Cities, Data Science and the Mind, computational structures for those who want a little bit more computing, policy making, civic tech, social data revolution, ethics, child development, genomics, social networks, cognitive neuroscience, immigration, and for those of you who want the math theory, there's probability and math stat as well. All of those courses are connector courses attached to this one. So you can take as many of those as fit your schedule this semester or next semester. I strongly encourage that you check those out, because this is one place on campus where you can get a sense of what a discipline is like without taking a full-on 15-week course in that. These are 2-unit courses typically. And you can get some idea of what goes on in a particular subject, and maybe it's a subject already of interest to you or you're trying to explore. So 2 faculty are going to talk to you about their particular connectors, and they will introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Anna Lauren Hoffman. I'm a postdoc at the iSchool here on campus, and I teach the Data and Ethics Connector. I really appreciated Ani's comments about the context of data science, that data science does not exist in a vacuum. And what we do in data and ethics is we don't have the specific kind of domain application that other connectors might have. But instead, we think about data science and data in social context, or political context, or cultural context. So to give you an example, on Wednesday, Ani talked about data. We could compare data on temperature changes with the movements of polar bears. Let's say we have this data and some intrepid researchers release this data online so that anyone can explore the possible effects of climate change, maybe nuances in the data that would help aid conservation efforts. But let's say one of these polar bears, we'll call him Jeff, finds out that all of this information about his movements for the last 5 years is on this database that's freely available on the internet. If I'm Jeff, I'm a little worried. Are people going to steal all of my dope fishing spots? Are poachers going to come after, target my family? These are real concerns. And now it's kind of funny to think about this in the context of a polar bear, but what if that data set includes information that identifies a person's sexuality, and that person happens to be a citizen of a country where LGBT people are prosecuted? And that's not hypothetical. WikiLeaks just did this to a Saudi Arabian man. So we talk about issues like that. We also talk about the impact of bias or historically biased data on contemporary efforts to automate certain processes. So we can think about historical racial discrimination that might be reflected in crime data and how that impacts or hampers the efforts of police to use predictive analytics to allocate their resources and predict future criminal activity. There's also a famous sort of thought experiment in ethics, the trolley case. I'm sure some of you have heard this, where you're the driver of an out-of-control trolley, you have no brakes, the tracks up ahead of you split, and on one track there's one person, and on another track there's 5 people, and you have a lever and you can choose, do you kill 1 or kill 5? We're not going to debate that here. But what used to be a kind of ridiculous thought experiment is exactly the kind of thing the engineers and data scientists working on self-driving cars now have to ask and answer. So we'll look at cases like that. We'll also look at the ethics of experimentation. Some of you may or may not be aware that in 2012, Facebook decided to toy with your emotions a little bit. They took a random set of 600,000 plus users, and they showed half of them more sad posts in their feed, and the other half more happy posts in their feed to see if it made those users write more happy or sad posts. It's what's known as the Facebook emotional contagion experiment. Users were not notified of this in advance, and when the study was published, people were rightly concerned about the power data scientists at Facebook had to manipulate people's emotions. So we'll talk about the nuances of that experiment and other cases like that. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alexei, and I'm here to talk to you about the connector that I give this semester, which is the data science for smart cities. And let me start with a question. Who of you see yourself in 5 years as being working in the countryside? Who of you see yourself in 5 years as living and working in cities? And this is amazing. The future of humanity cannot be started without understanding what the cities are and what the urban life will be in the future, because it concerns everybody. The urbanization is something we cannot stop. We can study and probably steer to make this life more sustainable, interesting, and productive for all of us. And what we are going to do in this course is we're going to share our knowledge of how to study cities. Because very often, your only way of doing it is through exploring the data that cities generate. And cities are composed of millions of actions of individual citizens, making some choices about what they want to do in the city, how they're going to move, who they're going to meet, what services they're going to use, how much energy they're going to consume in their household. All this integrated presents a city. And you cannot put a physical law on top of this. These are human decisions. You have to study this. And the only way to do it is from data. And we're going to teach you methods how to do it. We're going to go through multiple labs and assignments that will be really hands-on on real data generated from real cities, mainly in the Bay Area, to help you study and be prepared for this future of increasingly urban life. I'm not alone on this course. I've got Maddie Sheehan here, lead TA on the course, and also Aspen and Heather somewhere in the audience to help me give this knowledge to you and help you enjoy your learning experience in the course. We meet on Mondays, 12 to 2 in Dwinell Hall. I hope I'll see some of you there. Thanks so much.
How about now? Better? Okay. So thank you, Alexei and Anna, for that. As you can see, there is a slew of interesting and deep ideas and issues that are being addressed, and I hope that you will join the Connector faculty in addressing them. Now, Connector classes mostly start next week, and so please check them out. Some instructors will be coming, as Anna and Alexei have, to talk to you for a few minutes at the start of lecture. But check them out yourselves, and so that you don't go too far into the semester before you find, oh, wait a minute, I would really have enjoyed that. So please do. To our knowledge, this is the only course in the country that has this format, and what's happened is there's an enormous interest on the part of other universities that cost a lot more than Berkeley to run courses in this way. And in fact, one of our a committee that came and looked at this setup has written that they predict that this is soon going to be a model for the rest of the world. Indeed, stuff starts here. You're in with us at the start. This is an exciting time. Please, please explore the opportunities that you have. All right, so onwards. Lecture 2, August 26th. Have I got the date right? Yes, I've got the date right. Okay. Many lectures will start as follows. Well, maybe they'll start at all. Let me see here. With announcements. Take a look at announcement number 2. How'd you like that? Sound good? Yeah. So Lab 1 was a bit of a pain because of connectivity issues, and this has happened at the start of term a couple of times, and we're working on it. But, you know, I appreciate those who had the patience to sit through Lab, and when it took, 45 minutes to get on. As a practical matter, what this means is we'll give you credit. It doesn't matter. But we would like you to do it. So please do it for your own sake, and do it before Lab 2 so that Lab 2 is not a surprise. All okay? Okay, now this might happen sometimes during the term. There is a homework that goes up and there's some problem accessing it, or some technical reason why you have difficulty completing your work, and on such occasions it will be dealt with in this manner. All we are interested in is that you learn, right? So we will give you the credit for being here and participating, and you learn, and for you to learn, we have to have some opportunities for you to learn, and so office hours will be announced over the weekend and during next week, so that there's a lot of hours next week that you can come and talk to us. Please be watching Piazza. Join Piazza for this class, please, because your students ask questions of each other, answer each other. It's an easy way to get your answers without having to wait for the faculty to announce it. Though I must say our GSIs are wonderful, and they have been quite active on Piazza and will continue to be. Homework, there's a homework that will come alive sometime this evening on this week's portion of data8.org. And with it, there will be some tips for how to get access. It's not, I mean, you click on the link and you ought to get access, but you saw yesterday. You know, do you enter your CalNet ID before you go to data8.org or after? So we'll try it out in several different ways, and we'll write you a sort of tips for getting on, and then there will, of course, be piazza and office hours in case all of that fails for you. Homework is intended to be just a little workout in what has been covered and the ideas and the computing that has been covered. I don't think you will find it at all surprising. I hope you will find it interesting. It's due next Thursday, just so that everybody is not doing things on Thursday. We appreciate people who do things a little early. We'll give you a bonus point if you do it by Wednesday. This is a standard in many courses, and we're just doing it again here. Okay, I don't want to spend vast amounts of time talking about administration. However, if you have administrative questions, you may ask now. I will preempt one. Concurrent enrollment. If you have no idea what that means, it's not you. Concurrent enrollment. So I have had, 30 emails all about the same, saying, you know, I want to get into class, please add me. I think you all know that concurrent enrollment, I can only add you once all registered Berkeley students have been taken care of. You have requested access to B courses. You don't need it. Go to data8.org. Data8.org is a public website. You'll find stuff there. And everybody on the waiting list on concurrent enrollment, it's hard, I know, but you just have to be patient. You write to me asking, what are my chances for getting in? I don't have the data to be able to give you a sensible answer there, so please just be patient. In other classes, I would have some experience, but this class in this size has been offered only once before. And you will learn very quickly not to make inferences based on one data point. So I'm not going to do that. All right. Quick admin questions. We ought to get to work. If you've got a hand up, please wave it, because I'm not seeing any. All right, I have one request. People on the stairs, could you just make sure that there is a clear path in between you so that somebody who wants to get up can get up? That's fire marshal rules. Thank you. All right, so let's get going. What we did last time was we got a little taste of exploring data and visualizing and seeing what, that you can make quite interesting conclusions from very simple visualizations. What I'm going to do today is set the basic language of the field. And, the language you probably already know, but what I'd like to do is do it in the context of an example that has informed entire subjects. And for this, I would like you to imagine when you read a newspaper, red wine is one day good for you, the next day it's bad for you. Yeah, you should do homework, you should not do homework. You should exercise, you'll drop dead if you exercise. There's all that. That was my favorite. Chocolate. It's good for your heart. The British Medical Journal, NPR report. So there's the question of it's good for your heart, study finds. So what we're going to do is we're going to just take a quick pass through exactly what does this mean, what is involved in things like this. And if chocolate is not your thing, attach your favorite thing in there, whether it's homework or bicycling or whatever it is. Okay. Some people love homework. Come on. All right. So there's, if you want to answer a question like that, the basic thing is observation. You have to see what happened. And I'm going to use some terms which should not come as any particular surprise. You are going to be observing individuals. It is easiest to think of individuals as people, but they need not be. They may be countries, they may be cars, they may be anything like that. They may be years. And I may refer to them as study subjects or participants or anything like that. And some of those individuals receive a treatment. In the study on chocolate, the individuals were European adults, and the treatment was chocolate consumption. So treatment is something you do to your subjects, or it is a feature of your subjects. And then there was some outcome. And in the case of the European study, it was heart disease. There was a measure of heart disease. This is the standard language of the field, and I'll be using it without much discussion of what it means. And so now the question arises, does chocolate have anything to do with heart disease? That is question number one. So is there any relation between chocolate consumption and heart disease? Again, this is just to get you some language. The language that I'll be using is association, which formally is the word, just means any relation whatsoever. So is there any relation between chocolate consumption and heart disease? Now, if you're going to answer that question, the first thing that you're going to need is a bit of data. You're going to have to look at some people who've had chocolate and see how their hearts are doing. And so I'll give you some data. These are the data that were a part of the data that were used in that study. What I'd like you to do is I would like you to read it, remember the question that was asked, which is there any relation between chocolate consumption and heart disease? And then talk to your neighbor and see what you think. All right. So the discussions appear to be settling down a bit. What I'm going to do before I ask you about answers, I'm going to remind you of the question. The question was, do these data indicate, is there any relation between chocolate consumption and heart disease? All agree that that was the question? I didn't change words there. All right. So I'm going to give you three choices. And you have to pick the one that you think is the most correct. I'm not saying that any of these is without question the correct, but you have to tell me, you and the people around you, the discussion that you had, which one you pick is the most correct. So the first one, the choice that I'm going to give you is maybe. That's the first choice. The second choice is I don't think so. And the third choice is, yeah, kind of looks like it. Got your three choices? So the first one was maybe. The second one was no, I don't think so. And the third one was, yeah, kind of looks like it. All right, now with those three choices, talk to your people again. And I'm going to tell you something. Whoa. You've seen me for a day and a bit now. Maybe it doesn't cut it for me. Too easy. Okay, in spite of everything I said, hands up for maybe. All right? So there was, I think, a considerable influence by the professor saying, nah, no way. Okay. Then the next one was, I don't think so. Okay. And, yeah, it kind of looks like it. Okay, so it's very few for maybe, more or less because I forced it. And then about equal for the other two, but maybe slightly more for, yeah, I kind of think so. So now what I want you to do is think about the word relation. Any relation between the two. I did not specify what kind of relation. Yes? So I'm looking at these data, and I'll tell you what goes through my mind. Among those in the top tier of chocolate consumption, 12% developed or died of heart disease. Among the others, 17.4%. Those two numbers are different. Yes? There is no doubt about whether 12 and 17.4 are different. Those two numbers are different. That's a relation. We are not asking anything deeper than that when you say relation. And I know that in your heads, especially those of you who have taken other statistics classes, going, well, there could be many other factors. Yeah. Okay. But relation is much more basic than that. And so I will give you my answer. I see a relation. And just to make everybody feel better because they're freaking out, you're allowed to have an opinion. On a question like that, you're allowed to have an opinion. But the thing that you must not do is read more into a term than there is. Relation just means any connection at all, and there is one there. Now, there are people asking themselves, well, 12 and 17.4 are different, but they're not that different. Well, are they that different? I don't know. Yeah, that's why you are going to spend another 14 weeks in this course. We'll figure all that out. But 12 and 17.4 are different. We're starting with that. That's the observation. The question that was, I think, in many people's minds is the second one, is does chocolate consumption itself lead to an effect on heart disease? That is a much harder question to answer. You are now asking about causality. Not so easy. And indeed, in this particular study, the people who wrote about it said, yes, you can see an association, but you are not showing a cause and effect relationship. And for the next little while in this class, what I want to do is I want to give you perhaps one of the greatest examples in data science of somebody working with data that they're observing and trying to see what needs to be done to establish a cause and effect relationship. Because after all, we are interested in that. We want to know what causes things. And so what I want you to do is to first note that data science isn't new. Data science has been done for a long time. It's been done for centuries. And I want you to imagine yourself in London in the 1800s. Charles Dickens, that era, right? He was writing about it at that time. And, there are parts of it that are very rich and well-to-do and parts of it that are poor and crammed and dirty. And in the summers, they smell because, sanitation wasn't what it is. And what would happen in London is that there would be waves of cholera. Cholera would arrive sometime starting in Asia, and it would strike the city, and people would start dying. So you may have hundreds of deaths in a week, but then tens of thousands in a couple of weeks. It was this scythe that came through and just cut the population down. It would come, it would do that, and then it would disappear. And then everybody would wait for it to come again. And there would be dispatches, diplomatic dispatches. It is now in Persia. We fear it is in Hamburg, Germany. And once that has happened, then London is just waiting for the next ship, trade ship, to come from Hamburg. And a sailor steps off. And there's cholera again. And so people were trying to work out what is it that causes this, how can we deal with this? And remember, at that time, people did not know about germs and bacteria and so on. So all the decisions that we make in data science are based on what we know at that time. And so people then were trying to make decisions based on what they knew at that time. For us, looking back, it's very easy to feel superior. But they were trying to do the best they can with what they had. And I just had to type those words. What I'd like you to do is read them out loud, and then read them out loud fast. Go. Okay, now fast. All right. Okay, that was fun. What's a miasma? Okay, so this was the leading theory of disease at that time. Yep, exactly. Thank you. Bad smells. Bad smells cause disease. This was the theory of the time. And remedies. Here we go. Fly to clean air. That's not me that can't spell. That was suggested by King Henry VIII. Right now, it was all very well for him. He had palaces that he could go to. Fly to clean air was one of them. Less bad smells, less disease. Ring a roses, a pocket full of posies. How many of you have heard this? Yes, quite a number? The rest of you don't do nursery rhymes, not English ones anyway. Okay, so ring around the rosies, a pocket full of posies, and then? Ashes, and we all fall down. In some countries, they say a tissue, we all fall down. All right. A pocket full of posies. People in their pockets used to carry around scented handkerchiefs to hold up when there was a bad smell, because it wards off disease. What was the disease? The disease was plague. Right? A pocket full of posies, plague, you carry around sweet-smelling flowers, put it up to your nose to prevent or protect against this disease. We all fall down. That is a very permanent falling down. You don't get up after that. So just a note about nursery rhymes. Now that you're all grown up, go look at them again. They're all about death, disease, and politics. Fire off barrels of gunpowder. This was an Englishman who used to go out shooting, and when he came back, he was covered with gunpowder smell, and he felt that was really healthy. So you just take barrels of gunpowder in London, fire them off, and then that would be the end of the bad smells and end of disease. That was one solution. There was another solution suggested that you go to the top of the Eiffel Tower, where the air is clean, you bring back barrels of air and just let it loose in London. All right, now we're laughing, but they were trying to deal with what they had, Who are these people? You will recognize at least one of these names. Yeah, Florence Nightingale. She was a woman who didn't mince her words. People were talking about, maybe there are creatures that cause these diseases that we can't see. And she just stood up and said, there is no end to the absurdities of such a doctrine. She was having none of it. But she did not like smells. If you clean out the smells, you'll get rid of disease. That was her. And there was the commissioner of the General Board of Health that agreed with her. I think he was I don't want to malign him. He is not here to defend himself. I think, though, that he was the Eiffel Tower guy. All right, so in this setting, there are people still trying to make sense of things, and one person who had been looking at the data for quite some time, and he does not care who is king of the north, right? He's just... All right. John Snow he was a doctor. He was he did anesthetics. I can't say anesthesiologist very quickly. And he was, at that point, it was the first time that any kind of anesthetic was being used in childbirth. And he was called to administer this to Queen Victoria in one of her multiple births. Anyway, he was a doctor, and he'd been looking at the data, and he didn't buy the miasma theory because he was looking at houses that were just all next to each other. And in one house, everybody would die. In the next house, nobody would die. And he was saying, wait a minute, they're breathing the same air. They're smelling the same stuff. Right? So there's a little question about that miasma theory. And he looked at the data, and he just kept track of, where are people dying? When are they dying? And he did something that has become the primary thing to do when studying spread of disease. He drew a map. That's John Snow's map. It's of an area of London, a part of Soho, and that's where the deaths were happening. Now, I want you to squint and look at those black bits. So you can see things like streets, yes? All right, so I'm going to try and run my cursor. Okay, that there is Great Marlborough Street going around there. That's Regent Street. This here is Golden Square. Okay, now you see this long black thing? All right, so what he did was at each address, he put a little black bar for every person who had died. And so here is one person died in this house, a few people died in this house, and a lot of people died in this house. Okay? So he plotted on a map where the deaths were. And before I go on, I'm going to take a quick question. Everybody okay with that? I realize that you can't see it. You'll be able to see it much more clearly on your screen at home. Okay. And he noticed that the symptoms were vomiting and diarrhea. And he said this is something to do with what they're eating or drinking. And his theory was it was the water. And so he plotted the water pumps. So there are round things that say pump. That's a pump. This here is the Rupert Street pump. And this is Broad Street here. And this is the Broad Street pump. And if you take a look at those deaths, they're all sort of centered around the Broad Street pump. And so he started looking very hard at the Broad Street pump as being implicated in these deaths. Now, he had to explain away some other things. He had to look at why people are dying, for example, here, because this is very close to the Rupert Street pump. Yep. Well, those people said, well, Rupert Street is at the end of a dead end. It's a pain for us to get there. We drink our water at the Broad Street pump. It may be closer as the crow flies, but to walk there is a pain. I'm going to take a look at this. You see any black dots here? In this one? Any deaths? Nope. It's very close to the Broad Street pump. No deaths at all. That was the Lion Brewery. They drank what they brewed. And if they wanted water, well, the brewery had a well. Had no deaths there. These. Scattered all over, where you wouldn't expect a death. Children. Children walking to school who would walk by the Broad Street pump, drink from it on their way to or from. And then something that really got his attention was there was 2 deaths of cholera in Hampstead. Hampstead is a faraway, very genteel part in those days of London, very beautiful, clean, and so on. And why did 2 people die there? Because that would put the end to his theory. So he examined, and that was a lady who had, in fact, used to live in this region. Her sons had a business here, and they had moved her to the clean area to keep her safe from this epidemic. But every day, she had a barrel of Broad Street pump water delivered to her in Hampstead. She liked the taste. So the other person who died was her niece who was living with her, who also drank that water. Okay. So at this point, Jon Snow feels that he has something. And what he did, famously, was he asked the city council, or whatever they were called in those days, to take the handle off the Broad Street pump. And that handle was removed, and the waves of cholera went down. Now, that is an association. It is believed that the cholera was going down anyway at that point, but it is also believed that he probably stopped future waves by that. Okay? So this is one of the famous uses of data to recognize what is going on, where a relation is. And I want you to take another look. Great Marlborough Street, this curve here is Regent Street, that is Golden Square there. This is London in the 1850s, but London is still around. That's last night's Google Maps. This is Great Marlborough Street. This is Regent Street. That's Golden Square. And that, trust the British to know how to recognize one of their geniuses. They've named a pub after him. That's the Jon Snow, and just so that you are completely well informed, it has almost 4 stars. You've got an address, you've got a phone number, and there's a Uniqlo right here. You'll feel right at home. And in case you get there and you can't recognize it, that's the Jon Snow. What is that? That's a pump. What's it missing? Its handle. Now, the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, when there's an epidemic and they are looking for a simple solution or they're looking for a simple reason why things are happening, to this day, what they ask themselves is, where is the handle to this pump? This is one of the icons of science, and it is a first step, an early step in data science. But I think you know by now, and Jon Snow, to his credit, also knew that what he had seen was an association. That's all he'd seen. Drink water from place X, more likely to die. That's what he's seen. What he has not seen is drink water from place X and therefore more likely to die. He knew it. All of this formalization hadn't happened then, but he was a scientist just inherently, and he knew it. And so what he did was he looked hard at another map, and the previous map that I showed you, that is called Jon Snow's map, but this one is Jon Snow's real map. This is the one that actually led him to make a conclusion that we can now justify as causal. So what he did was he looked at the 2 water companies that were serving that area, and there was one called Lambeth, and there was one called S&V, and there was some area that was served by both. So there was a sewage works in London, and S&V received its water downstream from the sewage works. Therefore, its water contained whatever was coming out from the sewage. The Lambeth Water Company, on the other hand, received its water upstream from the sewage works, so its water was relatively clean. And so what he said, okay, now I can compare. And this is a critical thing. If you're going to make any decision about causality, the step 1, you have to have some comparison. So you have what you call a treatment group, that is the group that gets the treatment. In our case, we can think of that as the people who were getting, say, S&V water, because we are wondering about whether dirty water has an effect. And then there is a control group, and that is a group that does not receive the treatment. And so I'm going to try to go back to that map. And so what he's going to do is he's going to look in here. And Jon Snow's genius lies not in drawing a map, other people were drawing there, but to recognize that in that area where both were serving, there was really no difference between the houses or the families that were getting water from this company or that company. The only difference was the water company. There was all sort of mixed in like that. Some landlord at some stage had, picked up this water company or that. And that is the thing that he recognized that was going to enable him to make a decision about causality. If the 2 groups are similar in every way but the treatment, then any difference in the result, maybe you can justify, is due to the treatment. If they're different in some other way as well, of course, it could be due to that. And so he had what he called an experiment. I'll talk more about experiments before. This is always his grand, what he called himself, a grand experiment, and it is indeed one of the grand experiments of the subject. And I'm going to try as far as possible to give you the words of the people themselves, not words of textbooks, but what is it that people said when they were doing this thing. And he said, there is no difference whatever in the houses or the people receiving the supply of the 2 water companies or in any of the physical conditions with which they are surrounded. And it goes on. There's a greater text in your book, neither richer nor poorer. They're just exactly the same except for the 2 water companies. And this was the observation that now, if we look at the data and compare, then any difference we can ascribe to the water. And so, here again, actually, I'm going to just give you the data. Here is Snow's table. Take a look at that. Talk to your neighbors, see what it tells you. So S&V is below the sewage. Lambeth is above the sewage. All right? So that last column is interesting, isn't it? Deaths per 10,000 households. Please note that you can't make a conclusion just from this one. This is absolute numbers because you have a different total. So looking at rates is going to be very standard. And the rate in that last column, SNV, is about 10 times that of Lambeth. Right? So there is something happening in SNV, and he just said, okay, look, it's the water. And he was right. Did they believe him? Absolutely not. They said, we've read his study, and we see no reason to accept what he's saying. Great. In fact, at this stage, there was an Italian called Pacini who had identified the cholera bacterium of the Vibrio. But did they believe him? No, because there were miasma people in Italy as well. It wasn't until a couple of decades where, finally the miasma people were gone, and in Germany they had identified the bacterium, and there was a microscope, and you could now see stuff. So it took a while. But so he was as close to causality as he could come. In the end, for disease, what establishes causality? Well, biology does. Right? What data science can do is give you a very good idea of where to look. And that's helpful because there's a lot going on, right? If it just points, you shine the light here, then people know where to do their experiments. Okay, so the key to establishing causality, as we've just said, is that you have to keep the treatment and control groups similar as possible apart from the treatment. Then maybe you're on your way to assigning causality. Now you can't always do that. You can't always do that, and I want you to think of the example. If you're studying, for example, the effects of maternal smoking or alcohol consumption during pregnancy on the birth weight of the baby, then you are going to have in front of you the women that you are studying, and some of them smoke and or drink, and some of them don't. What you can't do is tell somebody you smoke and drink during pregnancy and you don't. They're not going to listen to you. All right, so you are faced with these two groups, and these two groups are typically not going to be different only in terms of the treatment. Right, the people who smoke and drink during their pregnancy and the people who don't are different, it may possibly in other ways as well. So it is going to be hard for you to deal with this, and that is something you have to face. And so the trouble arises when you have some systematic difference that is not the treatment. When you have what is called an observational study, as I described, the women who have this behavior or that during pregnancy, that's an observational study. You can't make an experiment there easily. In an observational study, you are going to be faced with this problem, and this can influence your ability to determine causality. And when you have such a systematic difference, that's not the treatment. It has a name. It's called a confounding factor. Confounding is essentially means messes you up. Right? So it basically messes up your causality conclusion. Was it the 60s? Quite some time ago, there was some idea that coffee drinking causes lung cancer, because coffee drinkers had a higher rate of lung cancer than non-coffee drinkers. But what do you think? They smoked. They sat in cafes like all the wonderful French philosophers, and they smoked and they drank coffee. And now we know through biology that it is the smoking that causes lung cancer. Okay? So what should you do? You should try to do an experiment if you can. You can't always. You should randomize. And randomization is going to keep the two groups as similar as possible apart from the treatment. And then you can work with this. And we're going to be looking at randomized controlled experiments. Quite a lot in this class. Okay? All right. I will see you Monday. Please keep an eye on Piazza and keep an eye on the website. Homework 1 will go up sometime this evening. Thank you. I really appreciate this. I would like to tell you the Berkeley tradition, though. This is held till the end of the last lecture. Thank you.